I'd like to call on the Minister for Ageing and the Minister for Disability Services, the Honourable Andrew Constance, who will formally open the forum today. Minister.
Well, good morning, everybody. And can I start by most importantly acknowledging country and pay my respect to elders both past and present on the lands of which we're gathered here this morning, the lands of the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation. Can I also particularly acknowledge COTA and also thank both Kath and Ian for their extraordinary leadership of what is a wonderful organisation representing seniors across our community and of course playing an important role in public policy development here in New South Wales. This morning I'm also joined by a number of my parliamentary colleagues. I note in the room Greg Applin, the member for Albury, Greg Piper, the member for, Greg, I've just had a memory blank, Lake Macquarie, apologise. I'm also joined by Helen Westwood, who's my dearest friend in the Labor Party, because I get to work with Helen on a number of important issues in the area of the disability space, and also another good mate in Melinda Pavey, who is the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health in New South Wales, and someone who has an enormous interest in ensuring that areas around advanced care directives and also, of course, palliative care is developed, particularly for those in regional areas. Talking about dying is not an easy subject because it brings into question our own mortality. Having spent a lot of time on a farm as a kid with a grandfather who managed a sheep station till he was about 85, his view on death was, of course, well, when I kick the bucket, the crows are going to find me in the top paddock. And in many ways, that's what he wanted. That's how he hoped to pass away. I mean, the family house was on the property. The cemetery was 300 metres away. He always had this great view in life that he was never going to go far in life. But he had this view that, one day he'd be out in the middle of the paddock and have an accident, or, age would catch up with him, and that would be it. Well, unfortunately for him, he took a fall in the kitchen one day and many hours later was discovered and ended up spending his last 2 years of his life in hostel and nursing home care. And certainly he always said to me, I'm never going to a nursing home, I'm never going to a nursing home. The point I'm making is that what people imagine the end-of-life experience to be versus the reality is something that we have to keep in mind when we have this discussion. Life is precious. Life can be taken away at any point. I went through a head-on car accident a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago. High-speed accident, hit by a car. It was doing closer to 100 than 80. And for the hours after that accident, I actually thought I was going to die. And during that period, I thought to myself, I haven't done X, I haven't done Y, I haven't had the discussion with my own family about the things that are important. Now that incident happened to me at 2:15 on a Sunday afternoon, 9th of January 2010. Never forget it, 2011 rather. Never ever forget it. Got that wrong. It was 3 months before the state election, so I got out of campaigning. But it brought into context that, to me, that life can change so dramatically. And of course, as we all go through the ageing process, and the closer we enter that final day of life on our wonderful planet, we all obviously think more deeply about those important life decisions. I come to this job as a minister who fundamentally believes in the right of the individual. I believe in choice and control, that fundamental human right of being able to have decisions in which you make about your own life, and also, of course, taking responsibility for those decisions. But making sure that when it comes to the provision of services, be they community service related or be they health related, that those services are very much tailored around the needs of the individual. Now, part of that is, of course, when it comes to decision-making capacity, that those big shades of grey come into it. The responsibility of government, I firmly believe, is making sure that we encourage and educate our community, particularly our seniors community, more so about that important planning component. In talking to Melinda earlier today, who indicated, and they've got divisions happening, so they're just ducking out, but Melinda made the point that certainly when it comes to the life course, an enormous amount of investment in terms of expenditure, because of the care required, happens in the last 7 weeks of life. Now, I'm very conscious that for many, the ability to have decisions in relation to one's health care needs when people are ending those final stages of life is fundamental. Coming again from a country perspective as the member for Bega, I know that palliative care services across the regions vary a lot. They vary in terms of the access to specialised clinicians. They vary a lot in terms of the choices that people have in terms of the location in which someone wants to die. For many, I think in years gone by, the notion and concept of dying at home versus dying in hospital is something which is fundamentally important. But what's of course happening is, because we've seen a very serious lack of strategic focus in the provision of palliative care services consistently across the entire state, it does have an impact in terms of those choices and that control that individuals are seeking. Gillian Skinner and Melinda Pavey have been working on a program in terms of the palliative care strategy in New South Wales. It's an important strategy. Gillian put out to tender last year $30 million of grant opportunities for local communities to come forward with what was required within their local communities. For my local community, we had 20 hours of community nursing around palliative care. That was it. So our local community has put their hands up for this money to try and get certainly a full-time nurse ×2 within the community, but also looking at the building of community support through volunteers, and of course also making sure that we get the visitation of a visiting clinician. Regional communities in particular, this is an issue which is a very real one, and one which certainly through the strategy that's been developed is also very, very important. Also, of course, we're very keen to make sure that we encourage greater education, particularly when it comes to the legal instruments that are available to people. Wills, power of attorney, enduring guardianship, and advanced care directives. And no doubt throughout the course of the forum today you'll delve more into advanced care directives. These are important. What worries me particularly as the Minister for Ageing is I'm not quite sure that everyone knows what's available to them across our entire community. And this is where the important role of COTA comes into it. It's where the important role of forums such as today comes into it. I know that certainly in terms of the framework that's been developed by New South Wales Health, that it's important that when you develop such a framework that its practical outcomes across the community are very real and very, very important. I would say, and it's one thing that is also important in all of this, given the wonderful diversity of our country and our community, that certainly cultural factors are also an element in all of this that must come to the fore, and of course are very significant when you're dealing within the very strongly held life commitments of individuals. It's also, of course, important that certainly in terms of the advanced care directives, that they are right. They are truly individualised. And of course, we must ensure that we have the expertise in the staff who are giving that support to people as they work through the advanced care directive process. Importantly, the conversation needs to happen. This is, of course, what today is all about. I think certainly there isn't anywhere near enough discussion happening within families, happening within the home environment to really get to the nub of many of the issues that people are dealing with. I know that certainly there has been a very important community debate started, as Ian and Kath alluded to, around euthanasia. But it's important that also we must recognise that more must be done to look at those later stages of life, ensure that those fundamental human rights of the individual are safeguarded and protected, and that dignity is maintained for the individual through these processes. I'm sorry I can't stay today. I have an acting hat on as well at the moment, beyond ageing and disabilities in terms of finance and services. So I'm stretched beyond capacity, but I do look forward to hearing the response out of today's forum. Ian will no doubt keep me informed of that. I do have my staff member here who will also be obviously engaged in the discussions, and I know that the Ministerial Council of Ageing is also meeting today, and they too are going to drop in later on in the morning. Thank you all for participating in what is a very challenging discussion, but a very important one, and one in which our community must have. Ian and Kath, well done on organising today, and I wish you well throughout the forum. Thank you.